All right, all right, all right. Well, we are back. We are back, and this time I'm in New York. I'm live from New York. This is your host, Young Brando. Let's check it out. Let's test this. Let's see how the voice comes through. I will have to get a microphone that's a little more portable and that's perhaps a little better for traveling. For now, we'll have to cope like this. This is the new studio. Well, for the next 3 weeks at least. We're in New York. We are chilling in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Um, Guys, you can already see I'm still in Los Angeles time. I'm wide awake. I should probably get myself to bed, but I want to uh, test out at least how far my upload powers go here, whether I can actually hold a proper live stream in this location. So let me know if you're listening. Um, let me let me put a link here. Ozzy, if you have time, just jump on and let's see if we can actually have you on and if we can chat. I actually arrived one day late. There were a few loose ends, a few things that I needed to take care of. The move is finally complete. I will be settling in once I come back for for about the last week of December. But until then, I'm here in New York. Um, for the next 3 weeks, this is where I am. I will probably try to get a good night's sleep tonight. I literally just arrived, stuffed my face with some good food, um, getting ready to turn in. But I wanted to check in with you guys, and I wanted to also see whether the live stream is working. And so far, so good. Basil's is here. Aussie Expat is here. We have the usual suspects. We have the regulars. So far, so good. Let's see. Aussie,
G'day, how you doing?
hey man. Congrats, first of all.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yeah, very unexpected. You're the only person I really conversed with about the whole setup, and I'd basically given up on the idea.
Well, I mean, of course, I can't get into your head, but
Mm,
we predicted this a little bit. That it would be probably easier to secure the pink gold on the bracelet, the Everose on the bracelet, and it may be more possible to acquire one with the second one pending, and that's how it worked out, I'm guessing.
yeah. Well, even getting one was going to be one where it was indicated strongly that I needed to make some like really badly soft purchases. But the main prediction was that this request would be much easier in about 6 months, basically. But yeah,
And
I got lucky. Basically, I got very lucky.
and that's 5 months too late for your anniversary, though, right?
Exactly. So I'd basically written off the idea. I'd left without actually expressing um, interest, really. Like I said I wanted to, but I didn't say, okay, well, you're telling me even to get one, I'm not really qualified, and so forth. So I didn't say which model Lena, but Lena did come in to try them on, and she knew she didn't. We actually left less certain than before we came in because she saw a few in Sundust, and I thought that was the dial for us.
By
And
the way, just to contextualize for everyone,
yeah.
since now we have a couple of people actually watching, um, Ozzy wanted to celebrate his big anniversary for his marriage, the Big 10. Quite an achievement for this young man right here, father of two. Um, coming up on the 10th year anniversary in January, if I'm not mistaken, and wanted to get basically his and hers at Daytona on Oyster Flex. Clearly, precious metal already. By saying Oyster Flex, we indicate that, and then pink gold on the matching bracelet, and he has already secured for Mrs. Aussie Expat the anniversary gift.
Yeah, and it's good that it came in that order too. But anyway, I think it was just down to luck. It really was luck, because we left with less certain directives than when we went in, when we visited on the 11th. I thought like Sundust, we'd both have Sundust dials or something like that, but she didn't really. There was a pre-owned one with Sundust dial, and she just didn't like it. I didn't understand why she didn't like it, but she just wanted something with more contrast. And I kind of left it at that, because it was kind of like not going to happen. So it didn't really matter what dial to select next. But if you look at the current dials, the only other one with actual contrast is and I think JJ has issue with me calling it that, the one that's basically the John Player special homage, the black and gold, or black and pink gold.
Why does JJ have a problem with that?
I think he thinks the Paul Newman dial is very special, but if you look at references on the internet, it's like impossible to find such references about which is. There's no definitive Paul Newman anything, quite frankly. It's not like basically all Paul Newman Daytonas that have exotic dials are Paul Newman dials, right? And Paul Newman Daytona, sorry. Am I wildly off saying that's basically a JPS dial?
I mean, look, us vintage guys can sometimes get really picky and collect as arbitrary as these nicknames are.
Well, that's my get to as well. This is really actually just a nickname. We're just sort of like, do you know what I'm talking about if I said it was the JPS dial on the Everrose?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, as arbitrary as these are, people get really attached to them. Like, think of it this way. Like, look, again, I'm not trying to, get into stolen valor here, but Marlon Brando is one of the most iconic actors of all time. And he wore a GMT Master in Apocalypse Now, very well liked movie, cult movie on its own right, incredible adaptation of an absolutely classic novel. Wears a GMT Master that we all recognize, yet no one calls, with or without the bezel on, a 1675 a Marlon Brando.
Right.
Somehow you have Paul Newman in so many different variations, some of which Paul Newman never wore himself. You have a Steve McQueen in Rolex terminology, which he never wore at all. You have a Jean-Claude Killy in Rolex terminology, the triple calendar chronograph, which he was photographed with maybe once. He has a Breitling Copilot, for example, that was his more common watch, but only geeks like me call that a Breitling Jean-Claude Killy. No one else knows or cares.
So. And like that is how my wife selected this watch. Like, so one, we never looked back at what other dial alternatives there were, but if you look at the current dials, the only other option is to go Sundust with black dials, although I think that's discontinued. I'm not sure, but this is the only one that offers a lot of contrast. It's a classic, gold and black. There's a lot of contrast. My wife likes that. So what happened was my dealer texts like, I can't remember. She was very coy. I was like, "How you doing?" I was like, "Yeah, having fun." she posted the photo of the watch. I'm like, oh, like, yeah. She asked like, did you want a Daytona? And I'm like, I said, truthfully, maybe. Like, I don't know. Do you want to talk? Because I don't know what she's going to offer. Because we left with just sort of a.
You are now you are getting a little too confident, my man.
No, but I don't want to string my deal along because she's trying to make a decision like really quickly. I know that that's the only circumstance she should be talking to me, and I didn't want her trying to hold up and maybe not secure a solid sale because I didn't know, because we left not even knowing if we wanted a specific configuration.
Right.
She sends it through. I don't actually like the configuration that much. It's like I chose the one from the pictures. Like, I like the Sundust, but I said, look, I'll put it in front of Lena, and it's really the bracelet one's for her, so I'll let her decide. And I didn't say anything. I just showed her the photo, and she goes, I like it. And then we went there in person. I said, look, this is not one of those I'm buying sight unseen. We're coming in tonight, and we're just going to have a look.
Like you said, Ozzy, there's some contrast on this watch. Some people like that. Some people die for a champagne dial day date, which might strike other people as too monotonous, too monochromatic. Same thing with Sundust rose gold Daytona. I guess that can strike some people as too monochromatic. I think it looks very elegant and beautiful in either configuration, really. And I'll say one last sentence about this. You always say, in questions of style, I defer to my wife. I think, look, I mean, I saw the shape she put you in to do this pickup. I like that. I like that version of Oz a little better than the usual Crocs wearing.
Yeah. So prior to this, we'd picked up the Eternity ring from Van Cleef and Arpels, and we'd gone to about 3 different jewelers before doing that. And she was like, really like, maybe this design works and stuff like that. I was like, this one makes the most sense. Okay, maybe we'll get my size order or something. But none of it was like when she saw the Eternity ring at Van Cleef, where it was just so much more vibrant and feminine as well. Her heart was right. She was genuinely excited when she saw it, and that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see her actually excited about it, something that would get heart racing, not just a tick box, on the paper. These are the things to get, And when she saw the gold Daytona and the dial, that configuration, she really went to 10 in terms of like, I like this a lot. I like this even more than my ring. So there was like true excitement. But while previously we were looking at Daytonas with Sundust dials, and she was just sort of, it's good, it just wasn't hitting her emotionally. But this configuration really spoke to her a lot. And so I was happy that I was buying something that was actually making her excited. Because quite frankly, I'm not sure if I was that excited about every single one of my Rolex purchases.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the ones that I had like tip-top excitement for was the original Submariner, the Batgirl, and I would say the Daytona. The Explorer took a while to get a feel for, and the Explorer 2, it's fantastic, but it didn't have that level of feeling to get to. So I'm very glad that this piece was sort of like that level for it, especially considering it costs a lot of fucking money. To not be excited about something and it costs that much, it's that would be the true crime.
Now I have 2 different questions. One I want to ask immediately, since you brought it up, because you said there are some of your Rolex watches that didn't really strike the right chord at first, or didn't really touch you emotionally, get to you at that affective level. So why else buy a watch like that? Why did you get them? To check boxes, like you said, or?
Yeah, I think they were check boxes, but that's kind of how you have to buy the Steel Sports Rolexes. You can't be sort of like, I ask for it, and then your SA goes out of their way to acquire one for you, and then you say no. That's the recipe for never getting one again. Now, I'm not saying purchase watches that you don't like. You know what I mean? Like, never say yes to a watch you don't actually want. I did want them, but I just have to admit that my excitement level when I saw it in person was not the same as getting my first Submariner. It wasn't the same as the Batgirl or the Panda. They were exciting moments. Rest assured, that they will be highlights for the year, but they did not strike me as emotionally as the other ones did. And I don't know, it sounds stupid, I guess, but you're paying a lot of money for a luxury item, and I'm not expecting to have that sort of heightened thing. I'm not sure if I'll ever have that feeling ever again. You know what I mean? Because there's only so many watches that you will ever acquire, and there's only so many that have stayed at sort of like grail level for you personally or something like that. And it doesn't have to happen again. It's not something that is demanded, but
No, I
yeah.
think it sounds stupid at all, actually, when you explain it like this, because at the end of the day, when you have an actual collection, it is absolutely fair to like some of your watches, whether at the moment of purchase or over time, better than others. I mean, let's not. I don't even believe that, but let's not turn this into like, I like all my children equally. I mean, it's true, and you're more than entitled.
Yeah, I think there's a men's barroom term for that. You've got the growers and the showers. There's some watches just out of the gate they get you, and others, maybe it takes a little bit more time to get that appreciation level.
I mean, if you say so. I thought that was just an excuse for people who have a small dick, but hey. So listen, the second question I wanted to ask, or the second point I wanted to address, is also that there is something about that very, very first serious watch. No matter what it is, no matter what your entry point is, when you get that first watch, whether it's with a couple of $100 you have saved, or it's maybe you saw it on the wrist of your uncle, your father, your grandfather, somehow it came to you through the family, or maybe you got your first serious job and that was your goal. I will get that watch. And once that watch hits, nothing hits like that one. I mean, I'm wearing my Breguet today. I love it. I still think my Reverso is my most beautiful watch, but my 5513 Submariner is forever going to be my best watch. Nothing is going to be better than that. Nothing is going to beat that. Let's just settle that question once and for all, because of the particular weight that watch carries. And it was my first luxury watch as well. Take care, Nick. Thanks for dropping by.
Yeah, the Panda Daytona also really hit, not because I'd coveted that for so long. I really didn't. That one sort of came by as like, should be the next watch, as more of a process of elimination. It's like, well, I've got a good relationship. There really aren't that many Steel Sports Rolexes to get apart from the Pepsi or the Daytona. And I was already told the Pepsi's completely off the books because I got the Batman earlier the year. but basically it came like the day after Christmas, Boxing Day, a very Commonwealth thing to go shopping for us on my AD. And she, after I said like, I want a Panda Daytona, and she'd like turn around, I've got one. Do you want one? You got it. It's today though. I'm like, oh my God. So it just all happened in a flash. And, I hugged her after that. No, I hugged her when she said she got the approval, because we were sitting there. She had to get a hold of a manager, and she goes, it's approved. And I'm like, and then, I gave her a hug, because, it was just very exciting, very emotional, because, I'm hoping that it could happen, and it was really luck. And this one was luck too, but a slightly different luck. So I think it's sort of a end of month luck, where they got to get certain watches off their books, even if they're hot watches that would be easy to sell to many people. I think one of the issues is Daytonas have qualifications, and so they can't just offload it to anyone who's got money. They have to find someone who can buy it, both in terms of money, both in terms of today, as well as they have an account that management would approve of.
Yeah. Here is another take on that first experience, or seeing a watch that you have maybe admired in some way from afar, and you don't appreciate so much in person, or vice versa. Sometimes there are watches that don't hit you quite in any way until you actually put it on your wrist, and you're like, aha, that's what this watch really means. Full On John says, I felt the same way, underwhelmed in the same way. First time I saw a Batman, awesome watch, but I'm like, this is it? Is this what people lose it over?
Yes. I can see that with the GMT. Over time, I've come to see that as less prestigious than the hype would suggest. It's a fantastic watch, but it doesn't rise much further to me than the Submariner. And I think Rolex and a lot of people see it as a more prestigious watch than the Submariner, but there's an authenticity to the Submariner that's hard to scratch.
Look, I mean, Rolex is a very pragmatic company at some level, right? Rolex doesn't have time for anyone's feelings, and Rolex itself doesn't have feelings, right? Yes, Submariner is more iconic for them at a certain level, but they realize the fact that in terms of sales numbers, and this is not official whatsoever, so this is just me working off the dome. I think GMT Master 2, with Batman, it had its first real hype in contemporary time, and with Pepsi in stainless steel, it has surpassed the Submariner within the professional range already in terms of sales numbers, and Daytona had already done that in the 21st century. So it's fair to say that. And look, I mean, again, people don't remember the Batman the same way, since now we have the Pepsi in stainless steel, but that watch really was the biggest hit of Rolex for 21st century after the Daytona. I mean, that before hype watches ever hyped, Rolex Batman was the hype watch before the Nautilus.
I credit the Batman, and I'm not, how we say, I'm not the person to christen it such. It was well documented at the time that this BLNR was easily the hottest thing in luxury, full stop. It had exclusivity levels that nobody expected, basically, and it became a problem that Rolex would soon have to deal with other things. So I honestly don't think Rolex expected it to. It was always going to be a hit. It had been a long time since I had a bicolor bezel, but it was. I don't think anyone could have expected it to have been such a sustaining hit, where like you would never be able to keep them in stock. You basically ended up having two watches that, the Daytona and the GMT, where you had this game that started really.
And to put it in the opposite perspective compared to Full On John, for me it's the opposite. Like when Batman first came out, I wasn't quite impressed. I wasn't really interested. But again, I'm a vintage guy. For me, it was too big, too flashy, too whatever. But now, years later, I think they got it right at that time, and they are still trying to find the right composition and color combination in the so-called Pepsi bezel. So, for whatever reason, well, not for whatever reason, for very specific material reasons, on the ceramic bezel, I don't think Pepsi hits the same way that it hit on aluminum. Whereas the so-called Batman, black and blue, it just makes sense. It looks good, and I think that's completely all right, right? Icons are icons when they were icons, and for the contemporary moment, I just think aesthetically it's a more coherent watch. Batman vis-a-vis the Pepsi, or vis-a-vis the Sprite, vis-a-vis even the so-called modern root beer, which I think is still a very pretty watch, but with the black dial, I just don't even think that it deserves that name, considering that the name came from the color of the dial and not from the color of the bezel to begin with. Speaking of people getting emotional about nicknames for watches,
yeah, but I don't. Do I get it? I think it's more just a shorthand for the watch rather than it is a this is a true successor to the root beer. But either way, it's okay. So yeah, I still personally really do like the Batman, the BLNR, and I was very excited about when I got it. I just I've had a few chances to look at the Pepsi and in hand, and that is also clearly a hype watch, but I get his sentiment because it's my sentiment for the Pepsi. That's very easy to like. This isn't. There's not a lot here to get really that excited about. But I do feel I really love the blue and the black on the GMT. There's something very very modern about it to me. That color combo, it feels like it wasn't done to death by that point, and even with many imitators of that watch, I don't think it's done to death because all the alternatives look like clear copycats without hitting the same mark. I don't think there's been any substitute for the Batman.
I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. Maybe, again, I think I don't know whether they're even trying or they're still trying to perfect the color combination. I also wonder sometimes about St. Peter's question, not only because I have the 16710 in that color combination on the bezel, but will Rolex ever bring back the Coke bezel motif or color combination, which is, of course, black and red?
They could do it if they discontinue the Batman next year or the year after or something like that. I think a lot more people are realizing, okay, the Batman probably is on the chopping block, or / should be on the chopping block, and it's not because it's hated. It's just it was not meant to be a new icon for Rolex. You know what I mean? Maybe that's why they got the Pepsi out so soon, despite obviously not having the right colors, because they couldn't have the GMT go for 2 decades being black and blue, the primary favorite, becoming a new, so how would you say, a new well-trodden color combo for Rolex that becomes part of the brand's imagery, like that black and blue. It's like you can't keep that on forever. I think it's not.
Well, I think we agree with that, at least on one level, which is if another color combination in this regular iteration, not the Destro mirrored configuration, comes back, I think they will eliminate one of the combinations, and the black and blue makes most sense. The so-called Batman makes most sense. And I also agree with you at the level Rolex does. Okay, I mean, I have said that they don't have feelings, but they also have certain storylines, let's put it like this, that they don't want to completely topple, completely get rid of. They are interested in iterating these storylines, which is why they constantly do nudge nudge, wink wink moves with certain anniversary editions and recreations of like one element from the vintage version when they introduce, for example, Explorer 2 with the orange hand, right? So I think they do understand that was a temporary solution, the so-called Batman, BLNR, and it's not going to be forever. And probably it will become one of those collectible Rolexes because it had a relatively limited production run. Of course, modern production is pretty extensive, even for watches that go out of stock quite quickly. And
it's going to be hard to say that. I don't disagree, but yeah, the whole relative aspect of if the Batman is discontinued, there's a lot of them out there. For a long time, it was the primary watch. Then even my understanding, even when the Pepsi came out, what I got from an AD Ask Me Anything was that they get delivered, roughly speaking, the same number of Batmans as they do Pepsis. And that actually shocked me. I thought it was probably more like 2-to-1, where the Batman was the more literally rare, not more desired, but just more literally rare. But certainly there's a lot of Batmans out there. But this would be in contrast to, say, another modern hype watch that may be collectible. It was already discontinued, the Hulk. That had a very reasonably long production run, but it was really only desired in the last 3 years, even years after the Batman came out. And so they may never have actually ramped up production and kept production low because the interest was just so low for the first like 7 years of its existence.
And also, by the way, I mean, look, limited numbers doesn't always make one model more iconic or more desirable than the other. The pre-Daytona chronographs, for example, whether we are talking about 6032 or 6232, the numbers of those are much lower than, well, you know, significantly lower really than the Daytona Paul Newman numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But they're simply not as desired as Paul Newman Daytonas or Paul Newman Daytonas with exotic dials specifically. So just because something is rare, by that virtue doesn't make it more desirable in the world of watches, and specifically when it comes to Rolex. Michael Paris reminds us of the now discontinued, well, long discontinued almost by now, Black, the initial ceramic bezel GMT that was and still is El Famoso Profesor's favorite watch, his daily driver. St. Peter says, GMTs are very low on my Rolex collection priority list, but if the Coke bezel comes back, it will quickly move to the top of the list. I'm loving this. I actually always preferred the Coke to the so-called Pepsi, but it is what it is. I don't know if it will. Go ahead.
Would you want the red is a color that can come in so much variety, honestly. It sounds silly, I guess, but there's a lot of shades of red that I think people would dislike
Mm.
and convert. While for some, I think for blue, there's shades that people will like more, but not many that people will literally dislike. While I think red is one where the selection of which red you use can actually be polarizing. That may be a reason they don't do it. Because while you want the Coke and St. Peter wants the Coke, what shade red are we talking about?
And also, let's be real. I don't want the Coke because I have the Coke, which is 16710, right? It is. But I feel like if they get the red right, which is a very important point, I'm glad you brought it up. I think it's in a way more striking in that contrast, which is why I like it. Black against red. But like you said,
Yes.
for example, on my 16710, the black has faded, and it kind of looks like a navy blue, to the point that people ask sometimes from photographs, wrist shots, is that a Pepsi or a Coke? And the red has already faded into, how can I put it? Maybe like a hot pink kind of shade. So it's really, with the aluminum, all these variations you might even encounter through your watch's lifetime, right? So it's a very different experience. With ceramic, you have to, like you said, set a particular shade, stabilize that, and expect people to like it or hate it, like you said, because it can be much more of a divisive question.
Yeah, I think a lot of people dislike the color of the Starbucks, the Hulk, the green ceramic. I think that one's a polarizing one on the green, because I really like it. I think I know enough people who don't actually like it. It doesn't actually ring well for everyone, but I'm not sure if I've heard anyone say they don't like the Batman. I 100% know most people prefer the Pepsi, but what I'm saying is, like, the Batman isn't actually divisive.
Right. I mean, it's one thing to be underwhelming, in pictures or in person. It's another thing to be despised.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Batman can perhaps provoke strong emotions on the part of some people, but I've hardly seen anyone have strong negative emotions about that watch. I mean, it's not a Milgauss, it's not a modern or vintage root beer, it's not it's not an Air King, it's not a divisive watch. Some people like it, some people like it a lot, but I've never heard someone saying, like, I really hate
They
that
shouldn't have
watch.
used blue. Yeah, it's like, one color's better, It's like,
And I was like, I was having this conversation actually with Paul Silesius on Instagram through the DM about salmon dials, right? Which is really, if you want to be strict about it, it's a particular shade of pink, but we call all different varieties and shades of that pink salmon in this broad brush fashion. And he was saying they don't always get it right. And I was saying, well, same thing can be said about the blue, but that's not actually true. Now you're waking me up to that aspect of the question. Of course, aesthetics is subjective by definition, but it is a fact, I think, that it's much harder to screw the shades of blue than that shades of pink, especially when you're talking about having mostly men as your audience.
Yeah, but even with pink, and if you're aiming for one that is, decidedly more feminine, not all shades of pink are preferable to all women either. So the previous OPs were this sort of very much a sort of a hot pink, you know, of the metallic look and very bright pink, and that's something my wife would literally never wear. The candy pink, she doesn't dislike. She likes it less than other colors, but it's not in that range. But it's one where you have to select, and some people are going to like it, some people aren't. With the blue, I don't think you're going to. It's hard to get a blue in a position where you're like, I don't want it. You know, they're very pleasing.
In a way, and this will go to answer Libro Grande's question I was going to say, but it's really a statement. Well, I mean,
I wouldn't buy it if this was case.
certain iterations of the Pepsi Red, certain iterations of the Pepsi Blue on the bezel are almost like a purple. Or lilac or something like that. So the Coke Red, since it will be applied on the black, will not actually be the same as Pepsi Red Libro Grande. I'm not saying it will be better necessarily. I think it will be more stable, probably more average, more textbook, more Werner's handbook of colors kind of red, but it will not.
I wonder if it'll be if you just hue shifted the Batman, if it will be at like the Batman's brightness level and saturation level, but just in red. That's what I would expect myself. So that's the first time I've heard someone say they would like the Pepsi's red and then the other side black, because I don't know, none of the Pepsi's colors have, the red or the blue, have ever been, I think, what most people would describe as red or blue in either case.
I completely agree with you on the one hand, but I feel like we are really in the minority in not necessarily appreciating that particular bezel combination. I'm not saying there are no other people, but it's just, I feel like most people still, you know, whatever the shade it is, that simply strikes them as the preferable or better combination when it comes to a GMT Master 2.
I feel like a lot of these strong feelings about ceramic colors are mostly developed looking at photos, and I'm not saying you can't get the feel for a watch on camera. It's not like a hard to get phenomenon like a solar eclipse or something. It's just that there is an incentive when taking a photograph of these watches to take the photo only once the lighting is at peak brightness and saturation on that bezel, and not where the normal in-between situations where it completely desaturates or it's in medium saturation. What you're seeing is like peak brightness, which has led a lot of people to think that the green bezel is actually quite yuck, you know, because they show it in the most pukey form in its photos.
Yeah, I mean, look, there is a reason that people started appreciating a lot of secondary market dealers that focus on the narrative aspect, the storytelling aspect of the watches, and take just good lifestyle photographs. Like, as much as I take digs at them once every so often, you know, that you get a watch like, you know, for 3-4K, and then you put it next to a coffee cup and you know, want to sell it for 10-12K. Well, good luck. But they do, right? You know, they and there's a reason for that, because most of the professional dealers and jewelers just shine the spotlight on the watch, use the most sterile environment, which they have their own purposes and reasons, to take photos of the watch. And the results, even though it might be more clinically desirable in terms of showing certain scratches and potential defects of the product, are not always the most aesthetically desirable. So of course people are taken more easily by someone who actually knows how to professionally shoot a photograph and knows how to put together a nice little ensemble to actually highlight that watch as a pseudo living object.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And certainly I love YouTube. Video is much better at trying to highlight, the variations of color and lighting that are possible in real life. While photo, even in a fairly photograph heavy article, is going to have, at most like 8 photos, and they're not all going to be of the dial and the bezel.
Yeah. So yeah, I actually I want your comment on this. I did the brave thing, and I actually came to New York without any Rolex.
Are you visiting, or what's
Yeah,
your?
so I'm here until I'm on an East Coast tour. I'm here for business until the 24th, but I'm gonna go see St. Peter in Brooklyn. I'm gonna go see Bezos in Providence. I'm gonna try to see Bill Sanders in Connecticut. I hope he obliges me and I can see his new Lyrique Etude #1 watch as well. Observatory
Awesome.
now, certified by the Horological Society of New York, chronometer grade. So I came for this three-week trip. I made a conscious decision. I said, I'm only going to take my non-Rolex watches with me. So I took a Seiko, I took my Breguet, I took my JLC, I took my Lemania, and I took my new watch, which I don't know if it was too slight and showed too little in the video, perhaps, to be recognized. Did you notice that?
I don't think so.
I got. Let me see. Are they here? They're here.
I've never been to New York, by the way. There's a lot of food there that I have to get into at some point.
Of course. I mean, I was just rolling in with the Uber from the airport. Look, I mean, Los Angeles food scene can rival and hold its own with anything in the world. It's very diverse. It has something for everybody, especially someone who is on a vegan diet like me must appreciate Los Angeles in some way. But, I don't want to turn HRH collection on you guys, but it's really about the vibe. You pass by these restaurants, no-name restaurants, really. I mean, probably not written up in any guidebook, or no Michelin star, no Bib Gourmand or anything like that. But you pass by the restaurant and you're like, I would like to go grab a meal in there. Like, it's just New York has, like, New York restaurant scene, whether you're in Queens, Long Island City, even Brooklyn, Manhattan, Bronx, it has a vibe. It has its character. It's just very unique. So if you like food, if you like eating out, you need to visit. And you're an otherwise very well traveled man, Ozzy.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm not sure how you missed out on New York, which is the most.
No, that's why I mention it, because it is a notable exception in my travel history for sure. Yeah, it's just never happened, because when I was working in finance, there's basically the world and then USA. So, well, actually, it's also true. The world, USA, and Japan. Yeah, you can do a lot of finance, Hong Kong, Europe, whatever, but then you'll have no business in New York and no business in Japan, despite doing X or Y in those other regions. It's sort of was a separate thing. And then in terms of USA, I've only been West Coast. Like it's really that simple. I've done one trip to Atlanta.
And you were in Seattle before, right?
Yeah. So I never did anything outside of West Coast.
Yeah, so I basically ended up getting another 1940s watch.
Wow.
This is the famous Universal Genève Tri-Compax, the triple calendar
Wow.
moon phase chronograph.
Very cool. And you're saying, wait, what year is this? What do you?
This is basically, it's the first movement, so probably 44 or 45.
Wow, it's a big watch for that era.
It is the jumbo. It's the 37 millimeter version. So this is in fact bigger than the so-called Eric Clapton, the late 60s model of the watch. That comes in the Panda and reverse Panda, as well as exotic dial configurations, and is very much adored and desired because cream era Eric Clapton wore one. But I really like this because it's steel, it's fairly large, and 37 is kind of perfect for my skimpy wrist.
Yeah. It's a fantastic size to get out of that era. It's very good. It's very it's not ultra modern in terms of it's not pushing up diver watch territory, but it's a modern size.
Yeah, and in a sense also, look, for me, of course, I would love a 1518 in stainless steel or in any metal for sure, but I don't have millions of dollars to spend on watches, much less a single watch. So until I can get one of the four examples of a Patek 1518 in stainless steel, this is the one. And I got this, I don't know, maybe this can be something coming up, by the way. I got this Alcantara strap for it to kind of match the moon phase.
It's very nice.
And it's vegan. So maybe finally I can become a vegan beyond my diet and phase out some of my leather straps, because I'm wearing the Breguet True on an Alcantara strap, which I think fits really well.
I did a little bit of research about Alcantara. It's an Italian company, right? They make it. It's often seen in like steering wheels of Ferrari and so forth.
Yeah, upholsteries of Lamborghini and even BMW. Some of the BMW sports models. Look, I mean, I like the material a lot because I've always liked suede to begin with. So Alcantara very much has the feel, the hand of suede, the same kind of nappy texture. Of course, it's synthetic material, but it's also more durable, in a way, more resilient. And it's not animal derived, which is a point for me. Again, I don't step on a soapbox on anyone about this matter, but I feel like it's a really nice alternative, and I'm seriously considering going all out and going with this. Some nice words for Clapton, so I want to just give that. Eric Clapton makes great music.
Sure does.
Idler is one of my favorite songs ever. Paul, we thank you for recognizing how sexy we are and how much deserving of a thumb up we are. Please like the video, guys. We appreciate you. And thank you, Hawkeye, for the nice
watch.
words. Thank you, Ozzy.
The Alcantara, so I do have that on. I like simulators. I've got a Ferrari 599XX steering wheel on my simulator, and it does have Alcantara, which is very nice. It's authentic. What I find, the feel, it's like a suede. It's quite textured, and with a steering wheel, I'm not always, white knuckling. I'm threading it through my fingers. I find the feel of Alcantara on my fingers as too much. It's too interesting. And so on my simulator, I have to wear gloves because otherwise it's distracting to me when I can feel the Alcantara. It is a nice texture on your fingers, and your fingertips are very sensitive, but I don't need that while I'm trying to drive the car. So I wear racing gloves on my simulator, even though it's like completely unnecessary.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. I mean, look, as much as I pet my watches and fondle them in all sorts of ways, thankfully you don't have to get that sexual.
But I think Alcantara, that's not by accident that it does feel like that, as in they want people in, say, a stationary condition, like sit in the driver's seat, to feel the upholstery, to feel the steering wheel, and feel something that is how would we say, intimate. You know what I mean? That it is a very fine texture that is pleasing. But I was just saying, but once you get into functional aspects, it's a little distracting.
Alwi asks, what do you make of the Japanese blue Breg Wet? Lordy, this is Breg Wet is what Paul uses to call Breguet. I guess it's because it gets him wet. I love it. I love the 3807 ST. This was a limited edition that Breguet made around 2000 for the Japanese market. It comes with a blue dial and otherwise all steel, except also having an exhibition case back as well. Let me pull up some information, some more pictures. This is a copy that's the Brussels-based, I believe, reseller Mr. Watchley had once in stock, and I like it so much that I actually sourced a blue dial exactly like this for my watch. Maybe next time it goes to service, just to mess around, I might have it put on. Obviously, I'm already telling you that I would never send it to Breguet to get service. They charge me $600 for a steel clasp. What do you ask for servicing what is essentially a simple automatic chronograph? And also, someone was asking me this question earlier on Instagram because I posted a picture of all of these chronos. I suddenly have 3 chronographs between the Type 20 Lemonia CH27 and the new Tri-Compacts. He was saying, like, can I trust vintage chronographs to be serviceable? And I was trying to make the argument, look, on the one hand, this is very much a man's man question. You move into a new town, you seek out a barber, and I'm in desperate need of a haircut, so that's tomorrow's project. You find yourself a cobbler, something for your shoes, someone for your shoes. You find yourself, if you like tailored clothing, you find an alterations tailor. And if you collect watches, you find a watchmaker. And once you find a watchmaker, I'm all for it for several reasons. One, I try to shop local whenever I can. So for these sorts of things, I won't go to Supercuts. I will actually find a barber or hairstylist, whatever you want to call it. I won't just, find a random person, to, I don't know, to resole my shoes or whatever else. I will actually go to the same person over and over because I want to support them. Same thing with the watchmaker. I want to support the entire ecosystem that makes it possible for us to enjoy this hobby. And I know for a fact that not everything is forever. So yes, today there is Breguet, today there is Rolex, today there is Patek. These brands probably will be there for quite some time, but Universal is gone. Basically, I mean, the brand name is there, but it's really dormant. So you need actually third-party watchmakers who are capable, who you can trust, and you rely on them, you depend on them. Ultimately, it is about establishing a relationship of trust. You know exactly who is working on your watch. You know exactly what you want. You can communicate with the person directly. And also, at the end of the day, even for very complicated watches like a triple calendar chronograph, I can get this serviced for less than sending the Breguet 3800 ST, the modern Type 20, to Breguet. I'm sure they will ask for about $2,000 when it's all said and done.
I'll just switch PC.
Okay. I'll wait for you. Michael Paris says Musk uses Alcantara for a space capsule. By the way, Ozzy was absolutely right in pointing out that it is an Italian brand, because not all faux suede is Alcantara. Again, I'm not necessarily saying it's one is better than the other. It is a trademarked brand though, and it comes from the name of the manufacturer. Similar materials have been used for the lining of chests and other sorts of jewelry boxes for perhaps centuries, you can say. But this is a particular patented brand. So that distinguishes it, and that's why you see it capitalized and even followed by TM sometimes with suppliers that use the genuine article. Jamie Opulence, lovely to see you, man. Michael Paris says Ming uses Alcantara as well. Let's see what Jamie says. All very true. Similar to getting my car serviced, I can get it much cheaper than taking it to Land Rover each time. Still, I go to Land Rover each time. Look, I mean, I don't have a case. I don't have a federal case against people who want to take their watches to Patek, who want to take their watches to Jaeger-LeCoultre, who want to take their watches to Rolex. I'm not going to make a case about it, right? I don't think there is one way to go about these things. There are preferences. Rolex doesn't accommodate all of my preferences to begin with. So for me to surrender a vintage Rolex to the Rolex service center would be, I mean, it's not suicide, but I will probably toss and turn every time I try to go to sleep for 6 months on end. because I really don't trust them with a vintage watch. I know that they have their Geneva-based vintage restoration center and atelier now, but that's prohibitively expensive. Like, they take a $1,500 deposit for a quote, for an assessment, after which they supply you with the full bill. And $1,500 will count towards that bill. At least that much is granted, but it's a lot of money to get a simple, two-hander watch serviced, or three-hander rather. My 5513, it is. I'm not going to do that. And a lot of my other watches too, I would just rather trust a local watchmaker who is just as capable, who has the same training, sometimes better experience, and I can actually talk to the person, and I know exactly what he's going to do to my watch. I know exactly who is going to handle it. I know he won't do something without getting my permission or authorization. I prefer it, but I also understand when people want that certification, want that stamp of approval, which brings us, by the way, to our next point that we will probably end up discussing, Ozzy, because I want to pick your mind on this, the Rolex certified pre-owned program.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, well, for back to just so a quick take. I take my Toyota to Toyota, but I would like an independent mechanic. It just seems like every time I go there, they're trying to add stuff on that doesn't need to be added on somehow. Yeah, the Rolex pre-owned, certified pre-owned. I mean, I think one of the conversation aspects that people like, they're going to pretty wild conclusions about this and what it could mean and stuff like that. And I would just more steer you towards what does, say, BMW certified pre-owned look like, and how does that affect the BMW second market, and what does Mercedes, or I don't know. So a lot of brands have their certified pre-owned. I think even Toyota have certified pre-owned. And in the car market, what I would say about it is you probably don't want to go for that model, because while it does come with warranties that you may perceive as valuable, the only reason they're able to provide that warranty is, okay, A, there's usually a price bump, but B, they've selected models that are probably not going to need the warranty. So they can pocket the difference, like they've selected a good model. Now that is valuable to you. So I'm not saying, the certified pre-owned programs don't have value for some people, but it won't be the case that you couldn't find a better deal. Almost assuredly you could. You could also find a worse deal as well. So yeah, that's one to help, how would you say, put a pin on how wild this could be for the secondary market. BMW pre-owned hasn't wiped out the BMW pre-owned market, outside of that program.
And I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the new Patek releases. So I'm gonna shoot a quick video tomorrow at some point, but I can share my basic view here. When you said, whether this will bring down the gray market, I don't even think that's the intention to begin with. Rolex, again, it's not in the business. They might call themselves, for legal purposes, a charity, the foundation and everything, and they do, God bless them, certain charity work, but they are not trying to bring down, at least now with this particular move, the gray market. They're simply trying to get their cut. Rolex is just being the big boss here. It's if you have checked the Bucherer website already, the models they have listed, and they have many of the models that are, by all intents and purposes, in the current production line, and they have them overpriced to the extent that you have to add 10, 15, 20% premium on top of the current trending prices on the gray market. So Rolex is certainly not trying to take the gray market out. They are just trying to get a nice dollop of premium on their own product and benefit. They're trying to find ways of adding value to benefit their trusted dealers network.
Yeah.
Because I can get long-winded, so say what you want.
Yeah. So I actually think this, like, Bucherer is an important first AD chain to run with, because Bucherer already have this experience, including in America with Tourneau, also now owned by Bucherer. So this is in response to, say, Palway talking about second prices being higher than the new prices. So what kind of experiences that is in the store. So I've seen questions about that in other streams, like, oh, what kind of experience is that for someone to walk in and the second price is higher than blah. The reality is like Bucherer and Tourneau already do have those watches in the case in those stores. Like in Las Vegas, they go to Tourneau, they've got full watch cases full of Rolexes, a few APs and things like that. And they're all much, much higher than retail. So it's not a new problem that they face, and certainly not one that they really sweat over. What they sweat over is like the 500 people each day asking for a Submariner.
Look, I think, coming back to Rolex trying to appease their established network of dealers, like Ozzy said, it's absolutely no coincidence that they started with Bucherer, which is one of the oldest and longest serving Rolex authorized dealers. But essentially, they are now rubber stamping / certifying / adding value to what every single established, well, not every single, but really 80-90% of Rolex authorized dealers I know always had and will continue to have pre-owned Rolexes in the case. Now, lately, in this post-pandemic era, for a while, everything was off the case. Everything that they had available was in the vault for preferred customers. Now that the market is stabilizing, correcting, which is really a euphemistic way of saying crashing, a lot of these pre-owned Rolexes are inevitably coming back into the case with Rolex authorized dealers. So now Rolex is basically, not implicitly, but explicitly allowing those authorized dealers to sell those watches and actually potentially do that with all the trappings of a new Rolex, except for except with a limited warranty, which is 2 years, which, by the way, is not coincidentally exactly the same warranty that you get from the Rolex service. So you will have the trappings of a certified pre-owned tag, possibly a new box, certainly a new set of papers, the benefit of the Rolex service, and ultimately that's the added value of that service, right?
Yeah.
They're not trying to do something revolutionary.
Yeah, and again, like I'll finish my sets. We'll get to Greedy's. Hello there.
Hello.
Bucherer and Tourneau already do this today, and they already have their own rubber stamps. Like, trust us at Bucherer. We've got your back on this one. This is a good watch. It's our certified pre-owned. This is like another rubber stamp on a product that they're already wheeling and dealing. So any question you have about, well, how does certified pre-owned work, like X or Y? Jamie Opulence is implying you could get some brownie points, towards your account, to get a new Rolex or something like that. And certainly the reverse has been true, where someone says, hey, come and trade in your Pepsi. We're not going to give you top dollar for it, but we'll allow you to buy a Daytona with the trade-in value of MSRP. So that's happened. I've heard about stories like that, where you trade in your coveted watch for an even more coveted watch, and it's like, that doesn't make any sense from the gray market value, but makes sense to you. You get it cheaper than the gray market, and they bought a watch off you for inventory for less than the gray market. So all sorts of weird things happen already today, and this just has an extra rubber stamp of Rolex next to it. Hello.
Hey, St. Peter.
YB, Ozzy, how are we doing?
Great.
G'day.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you came to pay your tributes to the King of New York.
All right, the king is back. The king is not dead. Now you're on East Coast time. Now it's like.
I mean, East Coast time, but I also arrived, and stuffed my face, and it was still 11 o'clock.
Right.
Yeah, but I wanted to at least squeeze in a little bit of, live and test things out. I don't know how the internet connection here is. Apparently better than my last.
It seems like it's a little bit better.
Yeah, right off the bat, the video quality seemed a little bit more clear.
How was
it? Could just be lighting.
Do you have FiOS where you're at?
I'm not sure.
That's that's the Verizon fiber optic internet. Which my experience in New York is that it's just way better than, it used to be like Time Warner, and then they turned it into Spectrum, and FiOS goes through Verizon. I don't know if Time Warner or whatever the new Spectrum has a fiber optic option, but I've had FiOS now at my new location, and it's definitely been way better with less service drops. And when I used to be on Time Warner, it was terrible. It would go out all the time, and I couldn't even imagine what that would have been like. That was pre-pandemic, dealing with like remote work and all that kind of stuff, like losing internet. You're just completely shut down. But that's good. So how was your drive?
I mean, I didn't drive here. I tried that with San Francisco when I was lining up for the Moonswatch, but I wasn't gonna do that with New York.
Yeah, I mean, driving from LA to San Francisco, you could drive on 1, right? Highway 1.
And it's pleasant. It's nice. I don't know how pleasant it would be to. I mean, I guess if you really want to make a road trip out of it, beatnik style, I guess. Yeah. Jack Kerouac.
You just gotta wear as long as you wear your MAGA hat, you're good. That could get you the whole way across the country, safe.
I don't know, man. I mean, have you seen my face? I'm not...
They'll, it'll be all right. They'll take care of you. But I did a drive from. I didn't do the drive from LA to San Francisco, but I did do the drive from San Francisco to essentially Portland, so I drove all the way up to Cannon Beach, which is a little bit north of Portland. And then I drove over to Portland. I did that a year ago. It was completely breathtaking. It was the second time that I'd been to the Pacific Ocean. And just as an East Coast boy and growing up going to the beaches in the summer and stuff, the Pacific Ocean still to this day just completely blows my mind when I get out there, because it is so different. Like, specifically speaking, in the US, it's just completely different than the East Coast. Like, the waves are totally different. The landscape is completely different. The water is different. And, of course, you have that Western setting sun that just is completely breathtaking. And that was an amazing trip, really like a once in a lifetime thing. And I've heard stories that it's kind of like a touristy thing to do. You hear about, these Europeans that'll come over and they'll do these long holidays, or they'll rent like a sports car, and they'll drive up and down either up or down. To them, it's like this whole like American, this kind of cliche or American holiday trip to do, but it was amazing. So I still have not done the cross country one though. Maybe one of these days.
I hope to do that eventually too. Although I'll do a mini one to get from Las Vegas to I think somewhere near Dallas for the total solar eclipse. I think in 2024.
Are you gonna try to go to the F1 at some point, Ozzy? In
Las Vegas one?
Las Vegas, I don't know, but Austin, Vegas, Miami, I think is too hot still to touch.
No.
No.
I don't know about Austin, but Las Vegas, I think it's basically a big no. There's no easier access for a local to see it than someone from out of town, and all the casinos have lined it up for like their highest end VIPs. I've talked to quite a few casino people, and they're like, they figured out all of the best spots and who they'll be inviting and some such. Although I was at a pre-opening event last night for Brewdog. It's sort of this gastropub sort of concept that has a really good rooftop overlooking the strip, and they open tonight, and so they may not have sorted out which VIPs will be attending the Formula One this year. So there might be some willing and dealing you can do with some haggis salesmen to get a viewing position.
I feel like, honestly, even though we have ostensibly three tracks now, it might be easier for most Americans to go and see it in Mexico City than certainly easier than Miami and Vegas to secure. Austin, I don't know. I had some friends go to Austin. I think that's realistic.
I have some colleagues who have a company that have are title sponsors for one of the biggest teams in Formula One, and so they've got boxes and such for every race. And they said Miami was a shit show.
I've never been to Miami.
I've never. I mean, I've been to Florida, but I've never been to Miami either for any reason. Which I actually, I want to visit Miami for all kinds of reasons. So hopefully that's going to happen very soon.
Have you ever been to a Formula One race?
No. I used to watch it, really in a militant fashion up until 10 years old. Like between 6 and 10, I was a fanatic, and then since Senna died, I'm trying to find ways to really get back into the sport, but that kind of ruined the sport for me for a little bit, seeing that live on TV, I mean. But yeah, I still love it. I love it, and I've heard it so many times that it's really an experience to savor, just from the perspective of the sound and how it really resonates in your chest. So it's something.
Yeah, I followed from about 1996 to about 2004, something like that. Now I follow a little bit since, but those are my main days as a kid. But I was lucky enough to grow up in a city with Formula One, Melbourne, Australia. So, so I went a couple times in my late teens, and those were the loudest those cars ever got. So back then they still had V10s naturally aspirated, as opposed to we're now down to V6s with a turbo on the back. So it sounds a little bit like a moped.
Actually, I had a question for Ozzy, and correct me if I'm wrong, but are you a competition marksman?
I wouldn't say marksman, but I do a lot of competition shooting. Well, I used to, not this year with the kid, but USPSA is the game that I play.
Okay, I remember you mentioning something about that. Yeah, I figure I would just let you know. So my father works for Mossberg.
Oh,
And
awesome!
yeah, he has for over 5 decades. He's
Wow,
like a old school, just like blue collar factory worker.
that's awesome.
But
Yeah, Mossberg make super affordable and excellent shotguns. Like not like Remington, basically.
So I grew
Yeah.
up, obviously, I grew up in this household with like a dad who's like this gun maker, and he got us shooting at a pretty young age. Like I think the first time I started shooting, I was about 6 years old or so,
Mhm.
and he used to take us to the gun shows, and he bought us like the child size 20 gauge
20 gauges.
shotgun with like the reduced length stock and all this stuff. And it's so, I have one sibling, an older brother, who's 3 years older than me, and it's like a pastime of ours on Father's Day. Like we go to the same shooting range that he's been bringing my brother and I to our entire lives, and we'll just do.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. He takes a lot of pride in the brand.
Mm.
And he's kind of like one of these guys where like, he's at the age right now where I see him, and like he's been doing this like hard industrial labor, for over 50 years. I'm like, when are you gonna like when are you gonna retire, man? He's like, oh, what would I do? He knows these other kind of blue collar guys that have, they've retired. Either they had pensions, or they did well enough to be able to retire, and they don't know what to do with themselves, and they end up, like going to the bar at like 11 o'clock or like
Hmm.
noon or something, and and then
That sounds like the good life to me.
I know. I'm like, so I have the niece and the nephew now, and so when he says, "Well, what would I do?" I'm like, I don't know, like hang out with your grandkids,
Yeah,
isn't that like the best part about being an old man?
I understand that, but on the other hand, my mom has been retired for the last few years, and she's going absolutely crazy. I mean, it's very hard to, if you are actually passionate about what you do, and she has had, three and a half, 4 different careers where she was really successful, really loved what she was doing. So if you have a job like your father that you're passionate about, and that you would like to continue as far as it takes you, yeah, I mean, let the man let the man
Oh
work.
no, of course. I mean,
Is it,
listen, this guy, as this, fairly conservative, blue collar gun factory worker, growing up, allowed me to go to a private arts college in New York City. I mean, and not only allowed, but like supported me in the process of doing that. And I
That was-
remember having this meal where we sat down, and he was like, "Whoa, art school. What do you?" He's like asking me like, "What are you going to do with that kind of a degree?" And I couldn't even, like, at the time I was like, "Well, to be honest, Dad, like I'd really like to make my own artwork. That's the dream. Like, you make your artwork and you try to sell it. But if that doesn't happen with a degree, you could be a teacher, or you could do this, or you could do that." And of course, like what I'm doing right now was absolutely nothing of what I thought I would be doing, but my education allowed me to do what I'm doing right now. So it ended up working out in the long run. But there was definitely some pushback there, just because it was so different, and he was like, he was a high school dropout, like he dropped out of high school and just basically started working in this factory. So I
yeah.
remember at my high school graduation, he got teary eyed, because that already, that to him was like this massive thing. Like, oh, my son's graduating high school. It just it's obvious it stirred up all these emotions in him. And then I was the first person from my immediate family to actually go to undergrad and finish it and get a bachelor's degree, which, if for my age, that's like, most of my peers have masters, but it's just, some families are that way. They just, they don't have the academic experience. Like, that's not the kind of trajectory for them. So
Yeah, I've got a Mossberg 930 semi-auto gas gun.
Nice.
Yeah, and it's one of the guns I've bonded with most, I guess, because to load that thing with the competition style like injection, like quad loading, you have to like really get a hand file or a tool to like just cut huge amounts of metal off the shotgun. And I remember like cutting into the part of the ejection port that says New Haven, Connecticut. So I know where it's from because I spent like an hour just filing away at that section so I could more cleanly get the shells in.
Yeah, it's funny. They say there's this saying of New Haven. You know, sometimes they refer to it as gun waving. You know, which that there's two thoughts behind that. One is that, you know, the city did suffer from, you know, some unpleasant issues with crime. It still does in certain neighborhoods. But when you look at Connecticut specifically, there's a lot of firearms manufacturing there. So, you know, Winchester, I think Smith & Wesson, Remington, Mossberg, a bunch of different firearms manufacturing companies have been located in Connecticut and Massachusetts for a very long time, and they're just kind of there. You know, the Mossberg thing's kind of funny because I grew up obviously in this household where there was the iconography from the brand around. But because my family was not a very internationally minded family, I didn't even put two and two together about the fact that like the brand's logo in their color scheme is like completely derivative of the Swedish flag. So I didn't even realize this until I'm in college and one of my roommates is dating the Swedish guy. And the two of them are like, I had this like folding chair. It's like a camping chair from Mossberg. I still have this thing. It's like, I have all this sentimental attachment to it because my father gave it to me. And it's a complete like piece of shit that's like falling apart, you know, but I keep it. And the guy's like, that's a very Swedish chair, you know? And I was like, oh, Swedish? Like, you know, like even at that point in time, I wasn't an expert on, on flags, let's say. So I didn't even put the two pieces together. He was like, yeah, that's a very Swedish chair. And so the company was started by this Swedish immigrant in the 1920s, I believe. It was like either the 20s or the 30s.
By the way, St. Peter, sorry to interrupt, but I just want to again welcome you on the channel. You don't have to be on the spectrum actually to be a panel member. So feel free not to have too much fun with flags. We like normal people too. So
right. I saw a TED talk about vexillology. Are you guys familiar with this? Vexillology? It's fascinating. It's like basically the study of flags, you know.
You know, didn't Sheldon have a whole obsession on this from Big Bang Theory? Wasn't he a vexillologist? No, you guys don't.
I have not. I never watched Big Bang Theory.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
What network was that on?
A few seasons, but I used to love it. I always watched it on streaming. I don't know what. I want to say FX. Not sure. What network was it on? Let's see. But yeah, Mossberg sounds CBS. Mossberg sounds like a Swedish name. I mean, it could be anything. It reminds me of the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode when he's going through a divorce and he's so happy to have.
He has the Jewish lawyer. Yeah, the guy has the. He's got all the Judaica in his office, right? What was it? His name was Berg.
Berg.
His name was Berg. Yeah. He has a shofar. He has a shofar on his desk, right?
I've never implied that I'm Jewish, David. I don't go to temple because I'm not Jewish.
What does he say? He says, "Let's take a schwitz." He's like, "Let's take a schwitz," and then when he's confiding in Jeff about the fact that he's been duped by this non-Jewish lawyer. Jeff tells him,
of course.
Man, that's such a good show.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. The latest season, I was surprised that he got in the digs at Hulu.
Ooh, Oh yeah. When he was pitching his show, right?
Yeah. The people who were like the yes men, like I can't I couldn't tell if this was ironic or not, because he is also involved. Like who produced it? I think it was Netflix in the end. I'm not sure. No, it wasn't.
No, HBO.
It was HBO.
Yeah,
So
Herb has always been HBO.
okay, so but they've got the panel of people and who is pitching to has like not a single one of them is normal. Like one is missing legs, the
Yes.
other one is a person of color, the other one is clearly gay. Like, and then he goes to another new studio and there's one person in a wheelchair, the other person is gender androgynous, and
Right.
the other person, it's just
But
I couldn't believe he's
wasn't
making
the
that
main
joke.
guy wasn't the main guy's name Don Jr.? And then he has the whole freak
Yes.
out about how the guy's name is Don Jr. I really think Larry David is one of the I really think he's one of the most brilliant comedic minds of our time. I mean, I'm very biased towards his type of comedy. You know, I grew up watching Seinfeld, so I don't know if it just influenced me, and that's why I think he's hilarious. But the decision to bring on JB Smoove to play Leon, it's almost
Leon's
like
the best.
right,
the
but
best.
that whole season when it's like they adopt the blacks and the blacks move into Larry's house, and then all of a sudden this guy who's not the victim of a hurricane or a natural disaster, who just happens to live in LA, he shows up at their house, and then the whole family ends up disappearing, but Leon remains. Like the one guy who actually wasn't the charity case is the one who remains, and he goes on and on for seasons.
He's a key. He's a key protagonist in many plot points.
but there was I think it was already in the first season when Cheryl's friend is about to marry this guy, the rapper. What was his name?
Crazy Eyes Killer.
Yes, Crazy Eyes Killer, and they start forming this bond for a minute, until of course Larry David betrays it against his own best intentions, of course,
because he rats on Crazy Eyes to his wife, that's the classic bros over hoes. You can't make that mistake, And what's crazy about that season and that episode specifically is like in that episode, Martin Scorsese is in that episode, right? Crazy Eyes ends up giving Larry the jacket that he somehow loses or it gets ruined that he needs for filming this Scorsese movie. That show is like, there are so many cameos of just some of the biggest people in Hollywood and in the industry, and so many amazing like there was a cameo of Judah Friedlander. You guys know this?
Right, yeah.
So Judah, I think his big thing was 30 Rock. So he was this character, and I still haven't even watched 30 Rock, so I don't even know, but he was this character on 30 Rock who apparently was like very, very successful, and he's done Star Wars and just all these huge production things. But through the pandemic, because I was following him, I've been following his stand-up for a while. I haven't actually seen him in person. He was doing these he does these live it's like Zoom comedy. When everything was remote, he started doing these Zoom stand-up shows, and it was like suggested donation, pay what you want, and you could go see his stand-up, and you're in the Zoom room with him, and you could turn on your camera or turn it off, or turn on your mic or turn it off. And I think he's really great. So
it's like it's kind of like these shows, but actually funny, I guess, huh?
It's these shows. I feel like this like online YouTube watch stuff can be quite funny at times. But yeah, it's an actual comedian, a guy, a guy who's getting paid to actually make jokes. So yeah, I think it has maybe a little bit more success at times.
Michael Paris says, by the way, I retired as an ER nurse at 65 this year. Well, congratulations. And thank you for your service, as they say. Just couldn't do it anymore. Healthcare became a shit show. I'm bored after a year in February going to do something like COVID shots. Yeah, man. I mean, it's I really admire you. I don't even, I can't even understand how much you must have gone through in the last few years, in the last couple of years. Yeah, thank you for everything you have done. You probably deserve a break, and I'm sure you'll find something to do. Maybe even another career. 65 is like the new 40, and I'm sure you look younger than I do. So you have a full life ahead of you, Michael Paris.
Yeah, healthcare providers, I think they don't get the credit that they deserve in the States. They work incredibly long hours, and they have to deal with people who are rightfully frustrated by just how vicious the whole system around them is set up, and it's not the provider's fault, right? Like this machine is just like this incredibly brutal thing, and people get really frustrated with dealing with the insurance and like how crazy expensive it is, and if their claims getting denied, or if it's in network or out of network. And it's really difficult, especially if you can't afford to just whatever bill you get, just pay for it and not worry about it. I could only imagine how the frustration of the patient sometimes lands on the provider themselves, and that's really, really difficult situation to be in.
Yeah, that's what he says. It's overwhelming. I can only imagine that.
But I'm glad you're able to retire. I'm trying to do that as soon as possible.
Unlike your father, huh?
Yeah, unlike my father. That's how I'm spoiled.
Last few years was horrible. Yeah.
Sorry, I just had one comment about trying to maybe go back to before I interrupted you two, but I don't really have too much to say about the pre-owned thing. My biggest fear is that it somehow will increase prices. So I'm just kind of curious what you guys think.
I think for the most part it will increase prices, but for things you may or may not care about. So as an example, all of Booker, like my experience is most of Booker's inventory is all naked watches, and not many in our space, for modern watches at least, are even looking at naked watches. So in some ways you could say that their program is rescuing naked watch value. So is that affecting you? It probably isn't. Like, it probably, for the watches that we may desire, it may actually reduce the price because there's less competition for it, because they'll get the CPO watch instead. Like, instead of the one original box and papers, no polishing, that sort of stuff. That's not, you won't get the CPO, but now someone who wants that watch may be competing for it, but actually if a CPO existed, they would be happy with the CPO.
Yeah, because I mean, the main concern for the average person when it comes to a quote unquote naked watch, no papers, no box, is authenticity, is the lack of any certification. So that's where the added value comes in. I'm sure they will try to cannibalize at least part of the other market as well. As you guys know, Buchara is the first stop. It's kind of like the test case, even though they are pretty intent on rolling it out over the next year and allow other authorized dealers, other established authorized dealers, to enter the network for the certified pre-owned program. I'm sure they will integrate other kinds of watches into it too. But I think, again, it's like, there are some people like me who appreciate sometimes at least papers, for if it is a very special kind of box and presentation, which is the case with the modern, revival of the Type 20, that's cool too. But I really, like, someone like me doesn't care about the give me value, no box, no papers. I know what I'm getting is real or fake. I'm educated enough about watches. I have handled enough of them in my life. I'm quote unquote an expert in this, so I don't care about the box or papers. But most people do, and for that, I think it will provide an alternative that's going to be very overpriced. Whereas if you don't care for any of those trappings, you'll still be able to find deals.
The value thing for me is really, I mean, that's the main thing. And I think it's just because of kind of where I'm at with, my spending power. The idea of even the list price for, a new Rolex, even like just a full steel one, not even two-tone, nothing too special. It's like, that's already a lot, and you can, anyone who's paid enough attention to the industry knows that there's better value out there for new stuff, for the amount of dollar that you pay from other manufacturers. You don't get the same, maybe you don't get the same warranty that you would get from Rolex. Obviously you don't get the brand cachet and all that kind of stuff, but the idea of buying something that's like 3 years old and it was already owned by somebody else, and I'm spending this massive amount of money for it, that's not it's so unappealing to me. It's like if I'm going to spend this massive amount of money on this luxury object, like, I want to be the first owner. Like, I want this to be my thing. Like, it just came from the factory. Like, I understand stuff gets discontinued, and there's the whole supply and demand thing. But
do you feel differently if the watch is discontinued?
yes, I do feel differently about models that are discontinued. So I don't know how much of my first AD story you heard the last time we spoke, but when I went in there, I was interested in picking up primarily either a sub, the Datejust that I ended up getting in the configuration I got, or an Explorer 2 white dial. But at the time, I was also kind of intrigued by what was still the 39 mil Explorer 1. And I wasn't like, I really want that, because I really wanted the Explorer 2. And it was just before they did the update to those two models. And I think, like, the 36, I actually am kind of attracted to the 36 two-tone because of how much of an oddball it is. And
It's pretty.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I mean, my only critique of it is, well, there's two. One is that I'm a little concerned about the size, because I guess I haven't tried on enough of the 36 millimeter case sizes, but I feel like 39 for me, for where I'm at with a steel sports watch, is probably a little bit more ideal. I actually think, for me personally, like 37, 38 in more of a dress case with a strap is probably perfect. But I think once you start to get into like a full, like, integrated bracelet look, like a full steel thing, like, I just personally, I kind of think it looks nice to have, a little more heft there. So the 39 Explorer, that's really the one. Like, for me, it's like, man, that's the one that I really, really want. So I'm actually less attracted to that whole segment of the catalog now, even though the two-tone is this oddball, and I think it would be a really interesting piece to have. My only other thing I'll say about just the two-tone Explorer, just because we're talking about it, is that there's something about the large loom plots and the yellow gold and the way that it reads with the black dial, that it just, when I look at it, I'm like, something looks weird.
The indices, no, I like the look of it. The indices just pop.
Okay,
You're
so
right. They really pop.
You prefer the yellow over the white.
Yeah. And they're really, it offers a lot of contrast, and it just really pops. I'm not sure why. Like, I don't know how unique those indices really are in the entire range. I'm trying to think. I guess there's two-tone Datejust that have indices that might be similar, but yeah.
By the way, it was Nick Fox's birthday today, so many happy returns. And he has a two-tone Explorer actually that he wears with some regularity. And for someone like him, actually, who wears a lot of men's jewelry, that was a very nice watch. I mean, the man has more rings than Bill Russell.
He wears big rings too. Like he wears like chunky like rings.
Yeah, and he has a story to go with it, which is really interesting. I won't necessarily go into it right now, but yeah, he wears rings, he wears cufflinks, and he mixes metals as well. If you do something like that as a man, that could be great. I know El Profesor has very strong and quite conservative opinions about this, thinking that every single two-tone or precious metal sports Rolex is really made for women. I completely disagree. I think, ultimately watches can be about proportions, about sizes, about, of course, your particular taste, whether it comes to design or combination of metals, or how you match other items and articles of your style. But I think, we should really, when it comes to watches, I think we should really push against that sort of idea that, like certain watches are for women and others are only for men. I mean, that kind of is a kind of opinion that I don't really gel well with. But in either case, I don't know. Maybe it's like the facile contrarian in me. I simply like anything and everything that goes against the grain in the Rolex modern range. So I love this watch for that reason.
I like it too. I mean, I feel like I fell in line, with the with all the other punters, let's say, when, like, during the initial release, where it's like, what, like, who asked for this thing? But I wasn't as surprised as I feel like most of the chatter I heard online about it, because it's like, well, it's like, duh, it's like two-tone Rolex, like Rolex. When I think of Rolex, I think two-tone. Like, that's just it. I don't think like vintage steel sub. Like, when I think of Rolex, I think two-tone Datejust, and I don't know why that is, but it's just like, that's what I think. Or I think like an older president, like the 36 mil day dates, and that is just like the first thing that comes to mind. And I maybe it's just because, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and there were, that trend was just very pervasive, and that's kind of, I think, what I saw, what I had experienced. So when this came out, I thought like, oh yeah, that makes sense. The size change to me is like, it's one that I scratch my head about a little bit, because, and I think people like Tim Masso talks about this a lot, when oftentimes he'll get comments about date wheel color matching. And so Rolex could get away with non-matched date wheels. And what Tim says, oh, well, they've been doing it incorrectly. Like, to them, it's like they've been doing it that way for so long that they don't have to prove anything to anybody. But in the case of AP, he talks about AP, at one point in time, they matched the date wheels to the dials. Then they stopped doing it. And then it looked like, oh, is that a mistake? So when they go back to what they were doing previously, it's an acknowledgement that maybe we made the wrong decision. So there is, you could potentially make an argument about the reverting back to the smaller size case was that, well, when they increased the size of the Explorer case originally, was that, did they think we made a mistake? It really should just always be 36 mil.
Yeah, it was a mistake.
So
I'm just going. It's not intriguing. Yeah, it was a mistake.
Have you owned the 39 or worn it? Just out of curiosity.
I've seen the 39 a few times in the pre-owned cabinet. I think it looks outrageously huge. Like,
just looks too big, huh?
It just looks like an exploded Explorer. But I think the same thing about the Datejust 40. Was it 41?
41, yeah. It's big.
Showing my interest.
It's definitely big. But I have to admit,
I just don't like the bezel being that big on a fluted bezel when it's at 41. It just seems like it's competing with a diver bezel in size, but it's sort of.
You could get, there's so much value in 36 mil day dates, like neo vintage, vintage 36 mil day dates. Like when you look at Rolex is starting $40,000 plus for a 40 mil day date.
And they're coming down again too, by the way. Like 1803s were always a great deal, especially in yellow gold, because it's harder to find pink gold and white gold versions of it with matching bracelet. But like, if you don't want to go that far back, and if you want the convenience of the double quick set, for example, meaning, quick set for both the day and date settings, 18238 was the first model they introduced that, and that's an absolute sweet spot when it comes to vintage / neo vintage day dates. And like St. Peter says, that's one of the Rolex models in the pre-owned market that offer an incredible value proposition if the day date is your watch.
Well, I mean, you could get we're talking about a full gold Rolex that is one of the most iconic models in their catalog for less than what you'd pay gray market for a non-date contemporary sub. It's like just to me, it's just a no-brainer. It blows my mind that more people are into it. But I think it's because the trends, for the past 10 years or so has been, it's got to be a big watch, right? I will say this though about exactly what Aussie doesn't like about the fluted bezels, like the larger fluted bezels. I'm actually attracted to that.
Oh, really?
Yes. Like I don't know. I think so. I think this is a very nitpicky aspect ratio thing, right? Like when I look at the object itself, and again, it's like, my experience with this stuff is I'm interacting through images more than in person. Like, okay, I'll try one on every once in a while. Like a friend of mine just recently picked up a Day Date 2. So like I've tried that one on, but it's not like he hasn't like let me borrow it. I just when I see him with it, I'm like, oh, let me try that. I get to try it on for a few moments, and that's kind of it. But the definition and the detail that you could see in that machined piece of gold on the larger sizes, I'm like, my eye just goes to that. And when those fluted bezels rotate in the light and the way that they reflect the light, it is so stunning to behold. Especially when it's crisp and it hasn't been scratched or banged up. That's
what I really love about the stainless steel Datejust with a white gold fluted bezel, actually, because like you said, St. Peter, like that thing just pops. And I know that you can have a more Rolex's fluting on the bezel is not the most minute, it's not the most intricate, but it's just the perfect. You can put this much better, St. Peter, but I feel like it's just the best balance between that kind of minute work and the way it would catch just the most light possible without being too too big. And it does have the fluted bezel. You guys might know because Ozzy made this reference. When it's that big, it almost looks like something functional. Well, it does have that sort of origin, right? Fluted bezels originally, just like the teeth marks on the case back of Rolex watches that require that special tool to open, were one way of securing the water tightness of the case, waterproofness of the case. But later on, it was used as a decorative element, which Rolex now even uses in stores, of course. Bruce G.
But then they now also do use it as a control element on the Skydweller.
Right.
Don't bring up that subject anymore.
But it goes all the way back to the Turnograph, though. Or actually the day what was it? Was the fluted bezel first? Oh no, wait, they were on bubble backs, right? Like, don't they go all the way back? Yeah, it's pretty old.
Turnograph is more of the engine turned kind, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right.
Fluted, but again, I defer to your expertise because this really is your realm.
So the pattern to me looks more like just in engineering and manufacturing in general. It's like a conical gear, right? I mean, that's really what the shape of it is. It's a cone shape. And, if you ever see a conical gear, the geometric shape is the same as that as a fluted bezel. Just the high points usually don't go to a sharp point because in general with especially industrial machinery that's on a larger scale, those you don't need that high point. I mean, you see it a lot in watch gears because they're so small. You have these highly pointed gears, but once gears start getting bigger, they usually don't need to have a super sharp point on the end unless it's for some very, very specialized application. So that's what I see, and just what I see. So the thing about the new stuff.
Just to recognize Bruce G's super chat. Cheers panel for $4.99. Thank you so much. We'll need to catch the show on replay. Just passing my best regards to all the punters. Thank you. Go ahead, St. Peter.
Yeah. So one thing that I've observed, and this is one of the reasons why, I appreciate this as a part of our dialogue, where I continue being attracted to the brand new stuff from the catalog and less attracted to specifically with Rolex, but the brand new stuff from the catalog, because I really do see when I look at the brand that they're constantly trying to improve the quality, right? So the bracelets are, in my opinion, I think they're better now than they ever have been. But they're bigger and chunkier and heavier. But when you look at the clasp, the fact that it's machined out of a piece of solid material, just the quality is it's just exceptional. Albeit heftier, it's thicker. It's not quite as streamlined as it could be. But I just can't get over how nicely made of an object it is. It's just something I continue to be very impressed with, and just the feel of it and the tolerances, all that stuff has gotten better, like how they've worked on trying to improve all the issues they had with bracelet stretch, and all those kind of things. That's what to me impresses me about the brand, and what I see.
I 100% agree on that level of detail, but the quality level is in every aspect of the watch these days, and it's to a very, very high degree. And I think it's easy for people who aren't familiar with what they're looking at to scoff at even the MSRPs of Rolexes and say that it's not reasonable value. You know what I mean? Because I think they are actually, at the end of the day, delivering a product that has no corners cut. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And, as an owner now, I like my whole experience with this is I have this object. You know, I put some new scratches on the clasp the other day, which is like, ugh, like every time,
Okay.
everyone, I'm like, no, like,
It's okay. Don't be that guy who puts like tape on the clasp.
fuck
or
no.
something, you know, come on.
Listen, when I was at the store, yeah, there you go. See, I have the polished center links too. So that's a nightmare.
Yeah, I don't know if you could see it. There's a good scratch on there, although this is too dark to show
looks pretty
anything
shiny to me.
significant.
I think my clasp looks worse than yours.
Is that, am I catching it there? Or is that just a reflection of a thread? I don't know.
I can't see it. I if I saw it in person, I would see it because I'm that kind of, like, I have that illness, right? Like it is an illness for me in my job. Sometimes people, you know, if something's questionable, like a quality control issue, people will come to me, and I'm like, why are you coming to me? Like, all I see are the imperfections. Like, I can walk into a billionaire's penthouse who spent, you know, tens of millions of dollars fitting his apartment out, hired the best subcontractors, the best, you know, imported Italian marble, all this kind of stuff. And what I end up looking for is like the defects in it. And that drives me crazy. Like, I don't want to see that. I just want to see all of the beauty. And that's what kills me about, because this thing, I was there when it still had the stickers on it. And when I was in the store, it was funny because I know it's policy. They're supposed to remove the stickers. Like, I know that is the company policy, but I indirectly was offered the piece without the stickers removed. Now, they didn't say, do you want to take this without me taking the stickers off? It was kind of like, you want the stickers to come off, right? Like, it was that kind of question. And I said, I was like, fuck yes, I'm wearing that thing out of the store right now. And I actually had a watch on the time. And I took the watch off my left hand, put it on my right hand, put the date just on my left hand, and walked out of the store with two watches.
Double fisting.
What watch is that? Sorry if I may ask.
I decided to get the so it's the 1-6300. So it's a 41 mil date just, smooth bezel, slate dial, baton index on the Oyster. And one of the reasons why I was never really attracted to the date just line, because my ex's father had an old 36 mil two-tone that was all smoothed over, right? And it always reminded me of the old man's watch, you know. And my ex had 7 years on me, and she was the youngest. So her father was, you know, older in age, and he was a businessman who had, you know, done fairly well for himself. And he wasn't a big watch collector. He was more like one of these guys who, I made it. I got the Rolex, and it was like the one watch that he wore every day, you know? So to me, like, that watch always kind of makes me think of an old man, unfortunately. Like, that's just what I think of when I see that. Like, it reminds me of that. So I was like, no, I want something more sporty, whatever. And so one of the reasons why I decided to go with what I think is one of the most sporty variations is because of that. So looking at the other professional models, so like, you know, the Air King, Milgauss, Explorer One, like, they all have the same smooth bezel.
Yeah.
Which unlike the OP, which is domed, you know, it's like a cone, you know, it's just like a flat cone. So that's kind of why I was like, oh, okay, if I'm going to go date just, I'm going to go with that one. And I enjoy it now.
I get you on that one. The reason I asked was because the only watch I was indirectly offered in a similar way to take it without taking the stickers off was the Daytona. And I asked about that actually after the fact, and it's because they have so many people who buy these and want to put them in their safe immediately that they have customers that get angry on this particular watch if they
freak out on them because they're like,
I wanted this for X or Y, and it's like it's one of the main watches that just goes straight in the safe, basically.
Understandable. I mean, they're really hard to come by, and the resale values are through the roof. I get it. I every once in a while, I don't know if you guys see those ads. I see them on social media all the time for like this nano clear.
Oh
It's
yeah, oh god.
it's like this buffing cloth,
Uh,
and of course it seems like like kind of a scammy thing, but um, even my essay was like, don't polish your watch. Like, I had heard that before I went in there, before I even connected with the brand. They just said, just don't do it. Like,
yeah.
and I actually really appreciate that. Like, to me, for the brand to be saying, hey, this potentially could decrease the value of your piece. And I don't know if that's because in the back of they have like a corporate policy that's like, oh well, maybe they're going to want to resell it to us at one point in time, and then we'll sell it and we'll have control of the repolishing if we want to repolish it at that point in time. Because it could, if you give a watch to someone who doesn't know what they're doing, they can really mess it up from polishing very, very quickly.
Cool. Sorry, guys, I gotta jump. It was really great talking to you in New York, and nice talking to you, SP, about Rolex and Mossberg.
Yeah.
Nice.
Catch
Have a
you
good
guys
night.
around.
Take care.
Thank you, Ozzy. Thanks for being here. All right, we have another 5 minutes, and I think the traveling is hitting me.
Right.
I'm running out slowly but surely, but this has been great. I had the chance to check out the connection. I also have a little bit of balcony action here, so it can be, if I don't freeze once I go out, it can be interesting to smoke a little bit outside while I'm broadcasting next time. So I'm looking forward to that. Probably need to be dressed appropriately for that, though. I feel like I'm freezing right now, sitting just like this. All right. How you been doing, man?
I've been great. It's like going into the holidays, we're pretty slammed at work, which is usually typical. Very rarely are we slow around the holidays, but I've just been like considering everything. I think I'm in like pretty good position. And, it hasn't gotten too like you're kind of arriving like just as it started getting cold in the city. For a while, like it wasn't really that cold.
Always like that. It's always like
I know, but New York is, listen, when it's not cold here in the winter, it's easier to deal with. It's more comfortable per se, but for me, it's like I feel like it induces more anxiety into me when it's unseasonably warm in New York in the winter. For some reason, I feel like something's up. This isn't right.
Well, let me put it this way. I do actually, I do fare quite well, because I like layering stuff up. I like wearing like a shirt and then a sweater and then a coat on top of that. I don't mind. It's just I have to adjust just a little bit. And in LA, I don't use heating at all, and use AC very sparingly. I just gotten out of the habit of doing that. I would use AC in New York City in the summer, but in Los Angeles, everything is so temperate year round that I don't really want to mess with things. Here, I need to adjust a little bit. But when I was out there in the airport, I landed in New York. It was pretty cool. I was waiting for the car, and I had like a sweater and a coat on top, and it was perfect. It's just now I suddenly, when I took my sweater off, my cardigan off, I feel like it's kind of getting into my bones, which was my first experience of New York as well. In 2003, I was like, oh my God, this is like a cold that I've never known.
It looks like it's not going to get down to freezing until I think next Saturday. Like I think this upcoming week will probably be actually a little warm. Although the forecast I'm looking at now, it looks like rain Tuesday through Thursday. So I don't know what your plans are or what your schedule is, but maybe those are the days to do your more indoor activities and take advantage of the more kind weather
Well,
for doing the outdoor stuff.
I'll be a little busier during and less flexible during the week, but basically I'm enjoying 3-day weekends here. So it's any Friday, Saturday, Sunday is absolutely free. Next Thursday I have an engagement. But other than that,
I think my company holiday party may be next Friday. It's not confirmed yet, but I heard some rumors, kind of, and it's always last minute, very little notice and kind of impromptu, but they could be quite fun. And friends and families are invited, so I'll let you know if it's happening. I should be going, and there's usually a lot of food and booze, and there's always a bunch of characters there. So if
you can add me to the cast of characters.
Right, exactly. Sometimes there's like a really nice range of characters. Usually creative artist types. Artists, musicians, a lot of people in architecture and design and that kind of stuff. Less not quite as much of the construction. It's not exactly like construction workers, although there are definitely builders there and that kind of stuff.
Why not?
I'll let you know, but it should be fun, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, just let me know if you're interested in checking out the shop.
Yeah, sounds good, man. If not for the holiday party, I'm certainly, we're gonna hang out most certainly, and hopefully I'll get to check out the shop as well. And guys, again, this was live from New York. I just flew in earlier. Well, I was gonna say earlier today, but just a few hours ago on Friday, actually, and so this wasn't actually an early enough show. It was basically at the same time as Los Angeles, but I'm adjusting to this schedule, and they will be at 7:38 p.m. here. We'll see how it goes. And I will also do a little East Coast tour. I'm certainly going to see Basil in Providence. I am going to be in New Haven, so hopefully I'll get to see the lovely Bill Sanders as well in Connecticut somewhere. So I look forward to that. And hey, I'm any and every one of you, who is on the East Coast and would like to hang out, send me a line. I'll do my best. Nick Butter, $5. Thank you so much. Forgive my interrupt. Hey, by all means, man. Just saying, I love your IG video, Lost in LA. Such an elegant music video. Thank you. This was like a very random and ingenious idea by a friend of mine. I was going to say here in Los Angeles, but in Los Angeles, back in Los Angeles. And he said, hey, let's shoot something very quickly to introduce this new watch of yours. And he took care of it entirely on his own. No $500,000 production team for the Watches and Style channel, just not yet. But I do have a genius like Joseph Makar on my side. and he was very kind to shoot everything on the iPhone and edit it and put it out there like that. I chose for the YouTube. I chose actually the first track from A Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. So What? Because I think that's just a very groovy, beautiful song. For Instagram, because I have business accounts, I'm very limited to choose commercial songs. I don't think I can choose many commercial songs. So that was the best I could find, and I think it's still a piece that fits the mood. And we just set a very natural setting. I had a decent outfit, and I had a great watch. So all it did was a little direction and a little bit of magic touch by my friend Joe, and there you go. So I'm glad you appreciate it, and I'm gonna send the link again into the chat so people who haven't checked it out can check it out on YouTube, can like it on YouTube, which always helps. And it's just a 1-minute video, it's not a short technically because it's shot landscape. But yeah, if you can help me pump up this video, there's certainly more to come. We did this on a very short notice, and can certainly do better production than this. And with your support, if you, again, all the links are pinned there. If you support me on Patreon, if you send in contributions on PayPal, super chats, Cash App, all of that goes directly into building the channel. And there will be more of these quasi-artistic, at times more informative, and better edited content as time goes on. Monetization was our threshold. I promised you to give you more consistent content, give you different kinds of content. This move has taken up a lot of my time, so I wanted to give you just a little snapshot, a little bit of a taster of what is to come. But that's one of the future directions of this channel. There will be more well-edited and well-produced videos that have a little more of a vibey, groovy air. And then there will be more professionally shot videos in watch boutiques and vintage dealers, and in-person conversations as well. But certainly the interviews are coming back in a strong way in 2023. So again, stay tuned for them. And yeah, maybe I was thinking, I can bring this guy for an interview, and if he doesn't want to show his face, he can remain behind the screen, and I can still interview him about his watches and show a few pieces of his, and that can be an interesting conversation as well.
Yeah, we could talk about that. We might be able to figure out a way to make it work. One thing I was going to say as a recommendation, if you have time, and depending on if the museums are open while you're in New Haven, and you may have already been there, but both of these buildings I think are just incredible works of high modernist architecture. The British Art Gallery and the and the Yale Art Gallery, those two Louis Kahn buildings in New Haven on the Yale campus, they just keep getting better and better every time I return. And specifically for me, the British Art Gallery building I think is just incredible.
And they have a pretty decent collection in both locations, if I may say so myself.
There is something about the juxtaposition between this like super classical, representation, representative artwork, in the sculpture and in the painting, in these rooms that are just like, this high modern era, super minimal, but the way that the materials were selected, they're there's like a lot of life in the material. You know, there's like a lot of oak, you know, just like beautifully sawn oak. Just the shutters. There are these shutters on all the windows that are made out of solid oak, and it's really nice. You know, that if you're in there when there are times when just the sunlight comes pouring through the windows and it cascades on the walls, and it's a really great space. So if you could check that out, I think you might be able to get some content, you know, while you're there.
If I can find time between slices of pizza, I'll make sure to go to some of those museums. I am looking forward to that visit in particular. I have some great friends in New Haven, and certainly great locations, beautiful haunts. Guys, thank you so much again for your support and presence. Hit the like button on the way out. Bruce G and Nick Butter, especially to you, thank you so much for being here and supporting me in my first live stream from the East Coast. Tomorrow we will do this properly around 7:38 if I don't get myself into any trouble. And I look forward to it. Again, keep supporting the channel. I'll make sure to provide you with some interesting content from New York, from the East Coast. A lot of it I will try to incorporate into the live stream format because I like the spontaneity. I like the unscripted nature. I like the conversations that emerge from it, that we can generate from it. But a lot of it, like St. Peter suggested, I will shoot and I will try to edit into something more thoughtful and more polished back in Los Angeles as well. But there will be a lot of cigar smoking. I brought a whole box to share with people here. So hopefully, St. Peter, you are not averse to that. I would love to offer you one. Yeah, so let's go for the month of December. We have a lot to accomplish. It's already the 3rd, so let's go.
We have to close out this year well. You know, it is kind of crazy imagining 2023. You know, just the years.
It's the year of the goat, man. It's the year
it is the year of the goat.
I mean, 2023, of course. I don't know. I don't know what it is according to the Chinese.
Maybe. Oh, okay. Maybe that's my. Maybe that's my year. I'm a Capricorn, you know. So that's part goat.
Chinese year. What is it? Chinese year, new animal. It's gonna be the rabbit. But yeah, I mean, 2023 is Jordan's number. It's the year of the goat.
No, it's a good one.
With all due respect to people who respect and follow the lunar calendar traditions and the Chinese New Year, for me, 2023 is the year of the goat, and it is the year that this channel is going to take off as well. I mean, we have already grown quite a bit in a way I didn't even expect or predict so fast, but you know, sky's the limit. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.
It's well deserved, and you know, again, as always, thank you. I really appreciate being a part of the community.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I appreciate that you are here. All right. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Good night. Take care, guys. Adieu.